I'm not gonna touch it.
All right. What was you wanted to talk about?
Yeah,
You want to talk about the wellness industry? That sounds like a great topic.
So like it's kind of crazy because after we were talking last week and I was listening back to on the podcast, I was like, well, we talked about like kind of like mental health. So I was like, I wonder what the statistics are in mental health, because over time it seems like I know in this in the back of my mind that like there's more people that have depression or loneliness, and like, you know, there's also more statistics going. There's more studies going out there, so it makes it easier to have those statistics. But then I was like, all right, so that's a huge market, right? I was thinking about Better Health. I was like trying to figure out, like, Better Health is the online like psychology or therapy.
#1 podcast sponsor as well.
Yeah, and like I was trying to follow who they got bought by. They got bought by this thing. It's called like Teladoc, and like I couldn't find anything shady on them, but it's a huge market. So I wanted to look into the wellness market size. Right now, in 2023, the market's had just over $554 billion dollars, and it's headed towards what would be like in 10 years $1 trillion market cap. All right, and which is like nuts to me that there's that much money going into the wellness industry that's supposed to make people well, but it doesn't necessarily seem to be making people better.
Well, so it's gonna overtake the video game industry in terms of revenue, maybe.
It's crazy, and like it's so a lot of things that they talk about is the two #1 growing factors are anti-aging things, like the amount of anti-aging, whether it's sculpting things or face things like that, but the other one is wellness tourism, which is enormous. And it's like, and they specifically say that the United States is the #1
wellness tourism country. Like
no, we're the biggest buyers.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
wellness.
Like we're the consumers.
Our consuming is nuts. We like, you can't see it. Well, I mean, you guys can see it, but like, this is North America and this is the rest of the world.
Well, I mean, like when you said,
like,
when you were talking about that earlier, like what immediately came up to me was that stuff. It's like, it's the white wealthy people who are putting a majority of money in this. Probably, I'm guessing to myself, probably like 85% is white wealthy people, because they have the money to like just pour into, you know, skincare products, treatments, everything. Like, and I think that's wellness is kind of like a big kind of broad label. We're talking about, like, I think Botox and fillers are counted in that.
All of that's counted.
I think it would be like, that's like the beauty industry versus like, I think maybe you could count, like, I think almost mental health is like
it's a piece.
Is it rolled in there?
It's a piece of it, yeah, because a lot of the things in the wellness area is catered towards what's going to make you feel well. Yeah, it's about feeling well. And so like with the looks and stuff like that, of course, like looking younger is part of feeling.
That's what Alex does now. Black Alex.
She's a
wellness person.
Like,
because she's a nurse, so she does like all these different
like injections and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's huge. Like the amount of, and like then you also have in the wellness zone. So you had like Botox that was like first, you know, for anti-aging, but then people use Botox now for certain things like muscles. So like to release your like traps or to release your sternocleido, like for your neck muscles and stuff, and all of that's tied into it.
Yeah.
And there's not necessarily anybody that actually regulates truly any of these things, because you're not using, like for that, you're not using the injections as intended, but you're still using them in a way. So it's kind of crazy. Like, I also thrown in.
How many people have BBLs out here?
Yeah, but also thrown into this though is the whole thing, because I looked it up, was the whole piece of psychedelic. Like,
she does that too, ketamine therapy or something.
And one of the things it says is that it can only count the amount of money that goes through registered licensed areas. So there's a whole bunch.
Oh, they're not counting the Albies out there?
Would you believe it? No, crazy.
Well, I'm actually like looking into Botox as for like the
TMJ.
TMJ, which I heard it's actually have a couple of friends that did it, and they said it works great.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone away, so I was actually looking into that too.
I mean, it definitely 100% works, and like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like a lot of stuff kind of comes up on this where, you know, one of the pieces of like the online therapy, you know, one of the questions is like, okay, it's great that a lot of people have this access to therapy, but is there any way to actually track how beneficial? Is anybody saying like, these are the results in person, these are the results online, just so you know this is the difference? Because in the majority of things,
there wouldn't be a difference.
I think it's hard
I think
to.
people would still go for it. Every female knows, like, you have a high chance of dying in a BBL. I ain't gonna stop them.
No, but it's not saying that. It's saying if it costs the same amount, like the whole point is like things are being introduced that sound very helpful, but the going to somebody, seeing face to face is possibly the same price, and it's more helpful because like the face to face interaction compared to not. So like part of it is just that the health and wellness market, anything can be greenwashed. So it's easy to be like, oh, I'm releasing this new thing. My marketing shows like the colors white and green, which is like usually like, oh, this is healthy and good for you. And there's
like Celsius.
Yeah, totally. Well,
That
I mean,
could
like
be counted towards
100%. I think Better Health symbol literally is a green leaf. Like,
yeah, it's a like it's
or better
it's
help, I guess.
psychology for
Yeah.
sure. That like marketing, like that's exactly what I do. Basically,
Yeah.
Diet Coke?
What's up?
Diet Coke is worse than regular Coke for you, right?
I don't know.
I mean, that's like, I mean, exactly like, because it's such a broad label, wellness, like so many different markets and categories can be rolled into it. But I think you were specifically referencing like BetterHelp, the company, versus like traditional in-person therapy versus telehealth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so hard to measure because it's like,
How new is therapy?
Not new at all.
No.
like, you mean just the concept of like, seeing like a
when did
psychiatrist, therapist.
Yeah, when
type
did
of
that
thing?
come? Like, is it a Western thing?
I mean, it was. You could technically no, because the majority of therapy in Western like thoughts, like take Carl Jung, like who's like everyone's like, oh my god, Carl Jung, like he took most of his ideas from Buddhism. Like a lot of these things are just Buddhist ideas. So technically, if you go back, they were practicing the same things. They just weren't calling it therapy. You know,
Yeah, I think
it's just the terminology.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
practice.
When did it?
It's
come
probably
about?
the last like 100 years or so. That's like this kind of relative form. Because we're talking about like psychiatry is like a Western practice. Like,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
by
yeah.
on its just objectively, it's a Western practice. But it does take a lot of things from other cultures. A lot, mostly, as they say, Eastern cultures.
Eastern cultures.
But I think like it's kind of tough because measuring of mental health and stuff is kind of like a
How can
Western
you do that?
a
Yeah.
Western construct, because like whereas like say Eastern things like it's not measured as like you know measuring it or labeling it as like these separate like issues. It's kind of like a whole kind of
I kind of feel on that because the Bible, it never really tells you, or Catholicism, it never really tells you while you're living on earth you have to suffer. Whereas like
I don't know,
the Quran,
Catholicism, it's
No,
kind of-
I mean,
no, the Quran tells you will suffer. It says their God or whatever is he wants you to suffer. That's how he knows you close to him. Christianity wasn't like, it's never like you have to suffer here on earth. It was never like, oh, you're meant to go through some suffering and
Well,
sometimes it's good.
I think Christianity is they use a different term, but you're born of sin, and sin is suffering. So so life is suffering.
yeah, Catholicism. It's
It's
pretty
the
much
same
you're
thing.
suffering. Like life is suffering.
Yeah. Everybody's basically says the same thing. The difference, I guess, would be between Eastern and Western is Eastern religions like life is suffering, but it's not your fault. Westerns is life is suffering and it is your fault.
Yeah, basically.
No, Western is you could be suffering, but it's not your fault because Jesus died for you.
No, but it is your fault because
No,
you're a sinful thing. You are sinful.
Yeah, born of sin.
You were born,
and
sin.
so your whole existence is to like
your life is at fault.
Is to glorify.
It isn't though, because Jesus died for that.
No,
for
that's
the fact.
that is only if you welcome Jesus into your
That's
heart.
what I say,
and
Christianity.
but you yourself, you're still born of sin. You are of sin. You are like, it's your fault. They're your sin. You are bad.
I understand all that, but it doesn't say you're supposed to suffer here. That's all I'm saying.
It
Quran says you're meant to suffer here.
I mean,
this isn't a pleasant place.
Well, like if you're thinking of Christianity, like that's it's an Abrahamic religion, so it's basically the same. Like that's the foundations. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they're very similar to each other
To an extent.
Yeah, but like
it's just all who
I mean, look at Christianity, like okay, like let's go back to Adam and Eve. Like they're cast out of the Garden of Eden and they're exiled into the world, which is a cruel world, which by its nature you suffer in your existence. I think basically that's kind of like your existence is you're repenting for being born in sin, and you're just kind of like.
Well, I always thought it was because like the Old Testament, we're not supposed to follow that anyway. If you're a Christian, that's just stories from more of the Judaism times. That's why it's the Old Testament. The New Testament is supposed to be the new gospel, what Christians follow, which doesn't kind of support.
Well, if you're just looking of like the New Testament, like I don't know exactly, but it's like all of this stuff is Latin translations and then basically English translations or whatever Western Latin romantic language is, and people when they're translating it, they're taking liberties and like everybody's biased, so it's like
that's the infamous joke is if you're a Christian, it's like he had so many homies that was his best friend that wrote books about him, but he never wrote a word about himself.
Yeah, basically.
And everyone who wrote a book was his best friend. Peter was his best friend.
Yeah.
Paul was his best friend. John was his best friend. Matthew was his best friend.
There's a lot of I'm not going to go through them all, but there's a lot of mentioning of suffering in the Bible. Like, there's so many. It speaks about suffering as something that you must go through. It speaks about suffering as to welcome, to walk the way is to suffer. So
I believe all that for the Old Testament.
I mean Romans, there's Revelations, the Psalms, like.
I think they all basically the three. It is. I can't speak on Judaism. I don't know nothing about Judaism really.
Yeah, I don't know too much about.
So,
it.
But I would assume that it's kind of. I don't know. It's a lot different from like the limited amount I do know. I just know Christianity and limited amount of Islam. It's like existence is suffering. Like you're kind of
like something like this. It's like we also glory in our suffering because we know that our suffering produces perseverance. Like
you're kind of like striving to be like Jesus.
Well, that's all Christianity is. They're saying you can't be like him. But the whole thing is just to try. But I just thought in like Islam, it's like it's just like in Catholicism where you need someone to be your buffer to God. Every religion is kind of different. I just always thought in Islam, it was more of like you are put here to suffer. And the only reason God knows that that you love him is through your suffering. That's not Christianity. God, at least Christian God, doesn't love you because you suffer. He inherently loves you. Now, if you want to be accepted, accept his son as the savior.
I mean, I think it is kind of like, wait, what like church were you raised in? Like what?
I guess it would be
Baptist?
Christian.
No, Christian's not.
I know it wasn't Baptist. It would be like a white people Christian. It's like Calvary Chapel, white people Christian.
Protestant?
It's not Protestant. It's not Baptist. Those are both like more southern division. It wasn't Baptist. It's not Protestant. I don't know what you call Calvary Chapel.
Evangelical. I
have
Pentecostal. That's what
Calvary Chapel's
Greek
Pentecostal.
Orthodox.
At least it
It's
says
Greek Orthodox.
It's,
Whatever, yeah.
it says they are charismatic evangelical churches with the origins from the Pentecostal church.
Well, there you go. That's probably why they just be singing all the time. They ain't holding snakes and stuff, but I mean,
Yeah, evangelicals like
Not that I know of.
there's a lot of stuff going on with that church.
there's a lot of stuff going on with any church. If you believe it all, then that's on you.
Well, no, I'm just saying like currently because they're like
like what they're doing.
yeah, like the Republican, like the GOP, like they're heavily influenced by the evangelical base, the voter base. Like they cater to the evangelical voter base.
Definitely.
I mean, I know nothing about this. I'm just taking one thing. It's just explaining suffering from an Islamic point of view. I think what it's saying is kind of, sort of, I guess, Eastern also. It's just saying that suffering is crucial for the development of your existence of life, and it tests your love, right? But
All I know is from their shit for sure in the Quran, the God that they worship wants you to suffer because it shows
I mean, I don't know
how
if
much you love him. I'm breaking it down into like,
I don't think
looser words.
I don't think it says that he wants you to suffer. That's a pretty.
It's written just like how in the Christian Bible it says our God is a jealous God. It's not going to say he wants you to suffer, but it's written in ways to where when it's interpreted, it's saying he does want us to do this to get closer to him.
You know, it's all the same God, right?
Of course.
Of the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah,
it's all
like-
the same God.
it's
It's
all the
not.
same.
Well, when you say that is like their
But
God,
I'm saying, why
it's
break
the
it up
same
by
God.
books? I'm saying in
Yeah.
the book that it's and the God written in the Quran and the God written in the Jewish book and the God written in the
Torah.
Torah or the Bible. They
the same-
are all the same God,
all the
but
same God.
I had to break it down by book because they're described differently in every book.
I don't think it says.
Did you say they are? Like you,
Yeah.
you were saying, like God
Like they're
doesn't have
more
a
than one?
gender?
Or they were more than one.
I don't. I'm gonna pull.
So,
I'm
okay,
gonna
yeah,
pull
he doesn't-
bullshit on your
He
statement.
doesn't want. He does. Their God doesn't want you. You're right. The Islam doesn't. Their God doesn't want you to suffer, and that's not how He knows that you love Him.
I'm just gonna pull without saying anything that you have to say that actually says your God. That's a big statement.
That's just what it is. That's what.
But you have nothing to go off of. You're literally right now just saying that you said it didn't say that, but it says something like that. It's a pretty big statement to say their God wants you to suffer. I'm just saying, that's a pretty big statement. You can stand behind that.
Yeah, I can because that's how they interpret it. So I mean, just like how Christians interpret the Bible a certain way, just like how the Joseph Smith people interpret their book a certain way, people interpret things.
So you're saying all people that follow Islam interpret it that way? Because you said
the
they.
majority, the devout for sure. It's just like if you're a Catholic, if you're a devout Catholic, you're probably going to believe in purgatory.
That's not the same though.
Why not?
The purgatory is mentioned. Like you're saying that it says in the book that God wants you to suffer.
In not so many words,
I mean,
or
if
maybe in more words than that. Probably more words.
any religion, I feel like, and this is me being in a Christian church, you have to take a lot of liberties in trying to figure out what the translations or what they're even saying is meaning. It's not all literal.
Well, none of it is literal.
And it's all, yeah.
So that's what I'm
Everything
saying.
is-
It's not, I just said 10 times. It doesn't say word for word. He wanted to, but in more than less words, that's how they look at their God.
I think
I mean, I haven't
all of
found
those
anything
three
that
is.
says
I
that.
think all three of them are not like he wants you, but I think they all kind of say that existence is like
Some sort of
suffering by
suffering, yeah.
nature. So whether it's
You're right. No,
Catholicism
you're
or
right. It
Christianity
does.
or,
Yeah, you're
or
right.
Islam,
and
I
with that,
think it
yes.
is.
So yes,
I
I,
mean,
will stand more by it. Yes,
That's
he does.
not. That's just all religions. Like literally, and Buddhism. I don't know if it necessarily is a full-on religion. People say it is.
But no, I'm just answering your question. Do I think that's what it says in the Quran? Yes. That's the answer to your question.
All right.
No, you're not going to find a passage that says our God wants us to suffer.
Well, I think
But
it's just
feel like
crazy
if
that
you
nowhere on
read-
the internet that there would, if I type in a question, does God want you to suffer in Islam? There's absolutely nowhere that it brings up something that would explain that point of view. That's just weird to me. It's the internet.
I'm not touching this one.
Why not?
I already touched it. It doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, You can find anything you want on the internet, or
Exactly, you
or
can.
not find anything you want on the internet. So when you phrase a question a certain way, maybe you're gonna get.
I mean, how else would you? Does God want you to suffer in Islam? That's pretty much the question. Yeah, I actually have no idea how we got to this from mental
Wellness.
health. Yeah, I don't know.
It's, well, you know,
Well,
the wellness
from
industry
wellness-
is a money making industry, and so is religion.
So is religion.
I'll bring,
that was
I'll,
the
I'll bring
no.
it
That
full
was
circle.
that was the tie.
The
That
through line.
was
It was more of like what is, because when you were talking about wellness and is it good or bad, I was correlating that with religion. We don't know if it's good or bad. Kind of people believe.
Oh,
what
I
they
think.
want to
Oh,
believe.
we were talking about it because of therapy. Is therapy a Western
Yeah.
practice? And then we got a little carried
Is it
away.
though?
Therapy is a like as we know it. Therapy is a
As-
Western practice, I believe.
yeah. I mean, if you're talking about like sitting down and,
Yeah,
and stuff like that, then
exactly.
yeah. But also at the same time, that same type of practice has been going on for
Yeah,
generations.
It's,
all
just,
over.
Just
They
the,
call it therapy.
The thing as we know
Yeah.
it is like
yeah. Like it used to be like, you know, you might talk to like the wise person in the,
the priest in the village.
yeah, or that, you know, I mean, that's what
That's
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
what I'm
exactly.
thinking
A lot
like,
of-
more like yeah.
like a person I know, he won't see a therapist because it's against, he feels that it's turning away from God, from like, he says, no, if I can't like talk to my priest or that, or, and like, that's not the way to do it, or I can't talk to Jesus, then
Catholic,
Christian.
Christian.
I mean, like, yeah, look at like AA.
Yeah.
is kind of like
Well, AA
Yeah,
is
AA is-
rooted in,
it's in
and then you need a sponsor,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of a priest, because that's.
yeah.
No,
well,
I'm not
Oh,
saying it's your
no,
priest.
that-
somebody
but it's-
speaks for you. It's your way to
It's
the
your way
yeah.
to, and it's not to it, but
it's somebody
he's
holding you
holding you
accountable.
accountable.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. I think though the thing that so that the religion would probably never allow anybody to have some deep study that would point towards if it's healthy or not. Like I don't think any church would allow somebody to do a huge study that could possibly show that following a religion is unhealthy. But I think in the wellness zone, those studies are there, but studies take a lot of time and money. And sometimes you get the funding, but still they take a lot of time. And the majority of the wellness things that we see right now, like it's not possible to have long enough studies to give the information of what is or isn't good. And like,
But why is everyone broken?
Because we're born of sin.
I mean, I guess, what do you mean by why, like, broken?
Well, we're the biggest consumer of this wellness, so why is it seem statistically that Americans are more broken than other people in other countries?
I don't think. I think. I
going
think
off of stats.
I think I know what you're saying. I think that's more. We have this disposable income, and
Yeah,
we are
that's
buying
exactly
our way
it.
to wellness.
Yeah.
Basically.
That could be one way to look at it.
I mean, we had, like, one of the big things is that we have the most spendable, like,
Capital spend.
capital or extra income, you know? So there's things like wellness tourism is huge on this. It's like you go to a retreat and they're going to teach you yoga and you're going to have a massage.
That's what I'm asking. Why isn't that big in like first world countries like Europe? Or
Oh, it is.
It
but
is
just
big.
as big. Why isn't there?
Well, because
piece of the pie as big?
we are
We have the most
capital. We make things for people to spend money on to make them feel better about ourselves. Like I went to that workshop. That's part of that, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, totally.
It wasn't leadership. It was like it was a leadership experience. But that's wellness. I didn't have the money to, but like my boss like spent the money to do this thing, and it's like because we are it's a capitalist society, we will make products for us to consume to give. That's not thinking about intention or anything, but like you're very familiar with it. Like if we do these things or if we consume these things in a certain way, like we hope that it makes us feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether it's like a beauty process or like,
Yeah.
But why?
And
though?
that's
my question. Why though?
I think because so what you're saying and what I see is that So we have the most disposable income. And then you have this, what's labeled here, increased awareness regarding health and wellness. That specific piece, increased awareness, I think is people have presented. There was a market that was presenting things that were helpful. Like, oh, we see these, brain scans and people acting in certain ways, stuff like that. But now you have just people saying like, oh, like, you're not doing this thing, so that means it's lacking from your life. So like, I think cold plunges are like a crazy like think of that. Like all of this stuff being like, oh my God, if you're having a bad day or you're feeling depressed or if you're anxious or if you're whatever it is, like cold plunge. And then like, oh, it's so easy, just buy a whole like, cold plunge system and have it there. To me, that's something that was made up. That's like a not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. When I ask why, do you think we're just more susceptible to this easy marketing?
I think because we don't have actual other problems, it's easy to make up problems. I think humans have to have problems.
Yeah.
And so since we don't have like this market, I don't think that they have problems that are like, how am I going to get food on the table? Or like, is there going to be somebody there to pick up my kids? Like, that's not the scenario here. So then if that's all the case, and humans truly, like your brain requires problems to pass through the whole day. Like it's always thinking about something. So if I feed, you're not sleeping right, and you're not sleeping right because you drink coffee, and you should stop drinking coffee. You should drink this new thing that we're making,
mud water.
And mud's fucking first thing gross. Second thing, like it doesn't work the same at all.
Too.
Should there be regulations?
No, because then you're regulating the free market. What there should be is if this market is growing like this, what you would hope is like how there are other markets. There's labels or warnings, but that's never gonna happen because it's too big, in my opinion.
Put a warning on a belief.
Well,
no, I think more so like along the zone, like, the only people that would put the warnings on them are the ones that are selling the things, which are like, why they're going to do that, because it's going to go against their money. But like you could take something like, there's probably people out there that a cold bath isn't good for them, but most people will sell it like this is good for everyone. Kind of like breath work. There's certain people that can't breathe correctly, so certain breath works aren't good for them. But most of the time, anytime I see somebody talk about breath work, it's like, oh, it's good for everyone, and this is the way you do it, and it'll work for everybody. Meditation, the same way. There are people like mindfulness meditation. If you are like PTSD, or kind of like a really chronic anxiety, is terrible for you. It can make you go in and into an episode. But meditation's the same thing. People be like, oh, it's great for everyone. And I think that's the thing, is like you have a whole lot of this market where it's like, it's kind of like throwing the word organic on something. It's like, oh, you need this, you don't have it, and you need it, and so we're making a demand, and ideally there could be some type of warning, but why would they put a warning on their own product? Like, why would somebody say maybe this isn't for everyone?
I would say we create solutions for problems we invent.
Well said. Yeah, exactly. Because I know we've talked about it. I don't fully, I think I'm not 100% as strong with you, but I do think we introduce way too many
Things, just stuff.
Too many variables to be connected. Like it's like I think it's called neurodivergence.
It's like when we
I
first
had never
got the
heard
internet and you look something up. My hand hurts. Oh shit! I got
you
AIDS.
dead. Yeah,
you know
dead.
what I mean? Like it's like
WebMD comes up and tells you like you got a cough, you're gonna die. You know. But I like neurodivergence was a thing. Like I remember my friend told me that, and I was like, well, why do I have that? And she's like, oh, it's because you said a movie quote so easily. And I was like, how does that? Like, because that somehow links to this, and like that's, and like a whole lot of self-diagnosis happens, and a lot of that comes from like the self-help zone, which is one of the gripes I have from self-help zone. If it was so helpful, like all these books say the same shit, and if it really, and because I've read enough of them, like they all say the same shit. They just relabel it in their own like 7-step program, you know. And if that shit really worked, then
it will work.
Then
it works for some people.
Correct.
But you also have to believe in that framework of
and that's why I
beliefs.
said some, because obviously how many people go to any kind of, let's say, rehabilitation AA thing and end up right there again in 6 months.
For real.
I mean, it's all like, I think we, as just this country, I think this is even taking religion into account. I think we might, even if we have religion, we lack a spirituality and community. And that's taking also religion. Like, if you don't have, like, if you took away
Religion,
the religious fellowship that people have, you would not like have that framework of spirituality. Like, it's like it's all dependent on that, and we don't have like we're not connected to like the earth itself and our surroundings.
I know this is gonna sound stupid, but that's what Andrew Tate says the problem is.
Well, but that's like everybody says.
I
that.
know that's what he'll.
So there's like
exactly.
like a broken clock.
He'll broaden the
a broken clock is right twice a day.
No,
exactly. So it's
like, but like, I mean, the whole like connected to the earth thing is so, and this is like, it's extremely true. But I think sometimes people they turn it.
You miss the message.
They turn it too much into like, I must like live and vibe with the earth and like be like mud on my
eat organic
body and like all that. Yeah, and it's like that is part of it. But like, I hear a lot of people in like the wellness zone say stuff like, "Oh, well, like I don't fuck with those people because they're not on my level or they're not," and like that is like, okay, I get it. Like, you're not trying to fuck with people that. I'm not saying you have to be like friends or anything like that, but when you do that separation of like they're this and I'm not, trust me, you're not
the them and they.
Yeah, like you aren't really putting out like the posse. You're not really putting out your truth.
Think about it. Why isn't there just one world religion?
Because they don't want it, or do they want it?
Well, like people, this is like to what you're saying is people will travel and seek out answers.
Yeah,
that are right in front of us 100%. Already. Like,
I did it.
Yeah,
I remember going to Buddhist temples all throughout Thailand, thinking I was going to have some, like I was going to walk into one, and I was going to have some type of experience. And I remember I was in like the fucking fourth one, and I was like, "What the fuck am I even doing?
How many do I got? How many do I got to go to?
Yeah,
maybe it ain't gonna happen."
Yeah, I was like, I remember there was this beautiful one. It was insane. I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna sit here for a second, and I think I'm gonna meditate." Yeah, I'm like, now I look back, I'm like. Shh. But like, I remember sitting
Stupid
there.
Westerner.
I remember sitting there, and then I remember it was like, open my eye, and I was like, "Hey, no."
But I'm taking a wild shot in the dark. But you could have maybe heard a story of someone that did do that.
That's
right?
usually what it is. And so that, like, when
Buddha?
when I teach, like last week I did a meditation group. When I teach that shit, I make sure to tell people like. You might hear stories. People go like, "Oh, I saw this light, and it was the most blissful light ever, and I felt like I understand the world, and like I didn't exist, and I was with everything." And for that person, that could be true. I'm not going to say it's not, because like that might be with it, but that's not everyone's experience. And more often than not, that's not the experience. But a lot of people go searching for that shit, and I think that's what a lot of like the wellness thing. That's I think how a lot of people get fucked up because they keep on like, I'm gonna go on another retreat because I'm gonna go find that thing. I'm gonna go
on another retreat.
I'm gonna read another. I'm gonna do another workshop. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. And I think like with like,
I finished Twin Flame.
Okay, so that's it. But I told you it gets bad. Yeah, I told you it gets real bad. But that's a great. You know, like,
that's this.
That's this. That is this. And then they find people, and what's wild to me is how trusting people are of the wellness community. They find somebody that says I have the answer, and people just sign up for that shit.
They want to believe it, though.
Because
people are going from one community to the other because they're like, oh, people are always like, I'm not excluded from that. We're always searching for community.
Yeah.
And if we get burned by one, we're like,
fuck
it's
that.
not that one. Just wasn't the right
wasn't
one.
My thing.
It must be with these other people because they're just echoing what like I've
and
been.
And the longer you're doing
along.
some shit, the less crazy it starts sounding.
Clearly,
yeah. And you're surrounded by like-minded
other people that are
and
saying,
it's like, it's. I mean, like shit, like. Life coaches.
Yeah.
That's like a problem that like that doesn't necessarily need to exist, but it's a thriving industry.
Yeah. I mean, you know what's funny is that coaching has been around forever. It's nothing new. I mean,
the words have changed. We went from like mentoring to now it's coaching.
But like even with like
a mentor's tight.
And they
are coaching.
Yeah, and they do coach you. But the thing with like life coaching that I think is wild is that they'll be like, oh, I'm basically telling you how to live like me, more or less. A lot of those plans, when it's like a full like take my 8-week course, and it's not teaching you tips and I'm teaching you skills, when it's like following yeah, I'm like, damn, that's crazy, because like it might work for some people for sure, but you're literally just saying
work for some. It could not work.
It might not work for a lot if they're not. They have to be exactly like a perfect. And I've seen like I know people that do that shit, and I'm just like, cool. I'm not, whatever. Your hustle's working. Good for you. Like, you know, what am I gonna say? But at the same time, I do think to myself, like, do you ever just feel kind of sort of bad?
No, because they believe it enough to do it.
They do.
You drink your own Kool-Aid.
They do. Yeah. Because I have asked them, like, isn't it weird that you're like kind of just telling people to be like you? And like, no, it's not being like me. I'm just giving them guidance, and I'm like, yeah, but you're just saying what you did. Like,
well, the label itself is kind of like almost like a signifier. It almost seems not necessarily problematic, but it's like life coach.
Oh yeah.
Like coach somebody how to live. And what you were saying like just a second ago about like being in this temple and like you're kind of like searching for this moment where it's like if you were just like how you are naturally, like you're a very present and like kind of always absorbing the moment around you. Like if you were just like, oh wow, this is beautiful to be just in your body. Like,
if you explain it a certain way, someone gets it as
then they interpret it a certain way. Like, but like if you were just like, wow, this temple is beautiful. Like this air feels great in my lungs. Like just like not following any sort of like teaching you've learned, but it's like you would have found like maybe
that wasn't what he was looking for.
Exactly.
A revelation in itself.
He
like
wanted the sparkling lights, and he wanted the gust of wind to roll over him.
Literally, like thinking that like there'll be this thing where like I feel like weightless light, like
tangible,
like an actual thing. Yeah, which
like
is
how you're different after
100%. Yeah, which is crazy because to your point, the night markets in Thailand. The smells, the sights, and everything like that, I was so present, so there. And that was a more technically a spiritual experience, being in that moment.
And you weren't trying to find anything.
And also, I don't, and I think majority of people, they don't celebrate those things. So we go through life not noticing when we're having our spiritual moments. Like when we're not like, you know what I mean?
That right
like
there.
that's, and I think that shit happens.
We've been conditioned to not get dopamine hits off of stuff like that.
Or correct, because we go back to the video games and stuff like that. It's like that's how you can get it, or likes on an Instagram, or that's whatever.
Normal. I'm supposed to smell the funnel cake when I go to Disneyland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you don't notice like these amazing things every day. Like when we walked in here, you're like, oh, that's like a pretty sunset. It's like,
oh yeah.
That's what
just
and
to
coming out of any of our houses in Rancho, isn't everyone supposed to see snow-capped mountaintops?
Right, right. You know, and it's kind of crazy because
that's exactly it.
There'll be one day, or not just one day, but there'll be a point like. In the morning, you'll walk out and you won't think it, but you'll go, oh.
You'll feel it.
Like you just feel it, and you go for the rest of your day, and it's not like that kind of thing, And I think like that's really I think a lot of like, back to the whole wellness thing, we're really trying to overcomplicate a whole lot of shit. That's really, when it comes down to the basics, like probably what they were saying in all of the biblical literature, it's just like, if you can just notice the thing that's like.
All that shit is basic morality.
Yeah. Basic morality, and also kind of saying like people throw the word gratitude around forever, but like today, even though that game, like I don't know, I wasn't necessarily that bummed that we lost the game, because I was thinking also like this is kind of tight, like just
dope spot,
hanging out with friends, the whole thing like that, and like.
When you start weighing everything, they weren't really the favorite.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I mean, like
it was raining.
A lot.
It was raining in the wind.
I mean, what can you expect from something happening in Ohio?
And
Ohio. Come on,
California, and it was raining. They're not used to water.
Bro? What do you expect?
You start weighing stuff. You start putting stuff really into perspective. And you're just like, it would have been dope if they won.
I just think there's a lot of times where, I think people are going around looking for the thing. Like I was just saying, I did, and I've done before. And because you're looking for that thing, you're missing the very thing that's right there, everything. And then when you throw the monetary side of this wellness industry, now you're shelling money out for it. You're basically doing this, going around.
That's like Scientology. It's wellness Scientology.
Crazy,
isn't it? When you shell out money, then in the person's head that's spending out money, I have to see results.
100%.
And
Yeah.
if I spend enough,
If I spend enough,
then
I
I
will.
will.
No,
Because
I
I'm just
will.
not spending
Yeah,
enough.
I'm not spending enough.
Or you do a retreat, right? And so somebody's like, they have their regular job and they go to some retreat, like, you know, in, I don't know, let's just say Thailand, right? And some island. And they're like, this is the most beautiful thing. I've never had this. This was amazing. And then they go back. And of course, they can't take that feeling with them. It might last for a week, maybe a month, you know, but then
most.
they get back. And so what they have to do now?
They gotta go
on
back.
another one. And
They gotta go
as
back.
opposed
They
to
gotta
trying
They
get
have to go every year.
They got to
Yeah.
get a reset because
and so all that teaches people is like, oh, that thing that is now monetary, you have to buy it, you have to go get it. It's not something
it's
that
just a new routine now I have to implement.
and instead of trying to be like, what was the thing that you actually liked there? What was a part of it? And then how can you take that and bring it here? Because most of the time those things are like, was it because you gave yourself peace? Was it because you were out in nature? Was it because you ate certain things? Can you do that here? But I don't find like the majority of like, I think really big wellness things I see, the plan is not to teach you so you leave. You know, it's not.
keep you
it's to
coming
keep you coming back. Yeah.
Why
So-
would they want you to leave?
That's why I'm saying that. Yeah.
So what you're saying is we got to design our own wellness
100%,
regime,
bro.
to
Why
be
would they
like,
want you to leave?
Honestly though, I've for a while been thinking about like a men's skincare that's like kind of catered towards more men, because I think we're in the zone where people actually do care about that shit. There's not really one that's
Give
like
them like a serum, a spray.
exactly, you know.
Lotion.
I will counter that because like my targeted ads know exactly what I'm thinking. I see tons
Nothing
of that
but-
every day, specifically catered towards men that are like,
Are they top level or are they like?
they're
Or they Dr.
well,
Squatch.
Well, the whole thing is
That's
like,
what I mean, yeah.
no, it's I see the whole gamut, like because it's the packaging, it's masculine, it's to people, and it's like accessible.
no.
It's to people who have like, oh, you know, skincare could be so complicated. No,
Oh,
just
yeah.
these three things.
Yeah.
It's easy. Just
Yeah,
do
yeah.
this every day, which is funny because it's like they're trying to like in a way it's good because it's normalizing like care for yourself. Like don't just like I used to use fucking body wash on my face, you know, that sort of thing, or like hand soap. Like okay, that's a start. But
Wait, we don't use hand soap for our faces.
yeah, I mean, I did that for the longest time, and that's
No, I got a face.
You don't use 3-in-1.
yeah. Oh, use that shit. That's like, oh, you can use it on your balls and your hair and your
I'm like,
face.
how does
you know?
that work? All of them the same.
But I mean, like, look
don't-
at like Castile soap, like which is like a very, you know, it's a pure soap.
Yeah.
It's plant based, and it's like you can use that stuff, but you won't get the best results, like the ideal thing. But I mean,
I wonder how much money I've spent at the wellness, because I know of all of us, I've spent
You
the
don't want
most.
to look.
I know I spent a shit ton.
I've been
It's
spending
money well spent, right?
stuff on beauty stuff for a long time.
That was a
so-
rhetorical question.
No, but it's a good question. I mean, but I know it's because some of it was money well spent.
Of course, that's what I'm saying.
100%. There's, I think my experience, and also because of my character, and this would be if you did the exact same things as me. I'm not saying we'd have the exact same experience, but I didn't notice myself feeling like, oh, now I need to go to that one to learn something that this one didn't teach me. But then when you go to that one, you're like, oh, I basically know all this shit. And
course.
and for some reason, like I would say there's a good amount of money in that zone where I spent, you know.
To me, it's like when you're coming up and you want to be an athlete and you want to go to, say, LeBron James summer training camp.
Yeah. And then
like-
you go.
And then you go, you're like, I didn't really learn anything,
Yeah.
but I did get a shirt.
It wasn't a loss.
It wasn't a loss. So then, you know, but maybe I want to try Jason Williams training camp next time. Maybe I'll learn something. And it starts kind of, you just,
Yeah.
Gotta look for that Charles Barkley training.
Charles,
camp.
that's at
This
McDonald's.
is how you eat a burger and go.
That's at Mickey D's.
Boom.
Take on the day. I mean, his
Yeah.
was probably be the most enjoyable.
No, yeah, I don't have any problem with people congregating and building community, but I do see a problem when it becomes scammy.
Well,
Like
I mean, that's,
religion.
But you also like scammy.
I do, and I
you
also
appreciate the scam.
I appreciate that's what it is. I appreciate the scam. That's
Do
all.
you appreciate the scammer or the scam?
both.
Both,
Look how much Andrew Tate. Look at that.
both. Because if it's a good scam and you're a good scammer, it's
How
almost
did
like-
you feel at the end of
I
Twin
felt
Flame?
bad for like homegirl,
Yeah.
but low key, like everyone that made it through, I was just looking at them like suckers. Like especially homegirl, like kind of chunky girl,
with the
the
one,
older lady,
oh yeah,
the older one that was trying to go lesbian with everybody. You're my twin flame.
So
Tree, you're my twin flame.
Just so you understand, because he hadn't got to that part yet. And are you? You're not.
I haven't seen it yet. Marlene was telling me about.
It's crazy. The ending was crazy.
The ending's crazy. Like people change
genders, bro.
Yeah,
you probably
because
got like
it's like
10 people to
you-
whack
like
their boobs off.
Yeah.
the masculine versus the feminine,
Divine
and like,
feminine, divine
feminine.
masculine.
And like
Yeah.
the thing is, they're talking, and I'm like, this is some bogus, like, clearly bogus shit.
But when you're in it, it does.
And
and,
also,
and when you're vulnerable, like you buy into
And
stuff.
that's
and
who
what's-
they prey
yeah,
on.
Yeah, and what's weird is, I know it's a psychological whatever fucking thing, but when you're in a group, you're more likely not to speak up and say no because no one else is saying no. So even if you're listening, you're like,
Even all the people that left, they just dipped out quietly.
Yeah,
they
seriously,
didn't even say nothing.
They didn't say nothing.
They just blocked them and
And then they gone. Like no one ever was like, this is some crazy ass shit. Like, and yeah, it's
Yeah, I was looking at redhead homegirl like a sucker, her sister like a sucker.
I felt
that
bad
big
for her
girl-
sister, man.
That one black girl, I was like, you could have been kind of cute, but you's a sucker. But she got out.
She got out. I feel like she got out quick too. Yeah, I think she
She's
got out
probably
quick.
like needing some help, and she's like, I gotta get out of here.
Well, yeah, like I mean, I think it's the like not having seen any of this, like people like in that vulnerable state, they buy into it, but then they're like,
100%.
okay, like
because they were all the same
Yeah.
type people. Like they've all kind of felt, I would say, marginalized. They all kind of felt pushed
Unseen.
to the side, unseen.
Yeah. And like they want,
They
and you
all
want
wanted
love.
love.
And you want love, and like love. I mean, what J. Cole says it: the most powerful drug of all, love.
But it's just like a fool just telling you, you're like, oh, I talked to this bad girl at Stater Brothers. She's your twin
She's
flame.
in flame. You have to stalk her now, and like literally that. bro.
I got that. I'm like,
So, I mean, it's kind of. I don't want to say that the wellness industry is bad because that's wrong.
Yeah, I wouldn't, because they were technically a religion.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of but they first started technically in that zone of being a coach,
He
right?
just knew he
And
could
so
scam more money as a religion.
I just see that much money going into it, and I just kind of wonder, like,
inventing problems.
yeah, 100%, and inventing problems for people that have money, but also inventing problems for younger people. Like I think we're like.
We're definitely inventing problems for the youth.
Businesses have gotten really smart in the use of psychology, and shout out to the CIA and the FBI with all of their like testing and that, because they're the ones that did it. But like businesses know what to do and how to do it and how to produce things to get people to buy. And I think that we are inventing a lot of things. Like I know that what generation.
Coming up.
No, the one that's
A alpha
no. What's the one before that?
Z.
They like don't drink alcohol. Like there's like the biggest drop off, but they smoke
Do lots of drugs.
They do a lot of drugs, and they
Smoke cigarettes.
They smoke, but they smoke weed too. But the other thing is like a lot of them are on like some type of like
Something.
SSRI.
some type of SSRI or some type like one of my coworkers, I remember hearing her talk about like, oh, I think I'm gonna get some Xanax. And I was like, that's too chill to talk about that thing because I know, and it's like the reason was because, oh, I must be anxious. Well, why are you anxious? And like no one's actually.
It's kind of like how the rude ludes, dude. It was like the suburban mom's chill drug, and now it's fucking pre-workout.
Yeah. I will say though, like I try to be careful with this because I think we do make up issues, but I also really think that it's really important for people to like. There are people who are chronically anxious, and also I think it's because we live in a society now that provides a lot more stimuli that makes you chronically anxious.
Yeah, I think
So I think 100% that's a real thing. I think depression too. I think it's a lot easier for people to feel depressed because it seems like we're in a connected world, but you don't feel it, and so you're like, am I the only one that feels like? Because no one else seems to be talking about it on social media. That
I was going to say like, kind of disagreeing with you in that like we find community in like our things, like how everybody, a lot of not that to say that we aren't, but like, oh, I'm like neurodivergent. Like you'll find a whole community on TikTok or Reddit or wherever that agrees with you, and so people are like leaning into it. Not to say that invalidates their experience, but like, you know, maybe we just will focus on just kind of communing with like these problems we have, but it's like, where do you go from there? Like we don't really have any, I don't want to say solutions, but it's like, because I don't think that framework exists for people to dress up besides the regular things of like, oh, see the doctor and Medicaid or therapy, which doesn't work for everybody. It's like, and we can't say, and some people will just be like, oh, just go outside and exercise. Like that's the easiest thing. It's like that, like if you're depressed, you're not going to fucking do that.
Or like if you're depressed, you're not gonna do it. If you have a chronic pain or sickness, those things you can't do. And so when people say stuff about that or like eat healthy food, I'm like, some people literally just like can't
eat or can't afford.
They don't have that access.
But I mean, I think it's great that people are acknowledging that. I think that's the first step, is acknowledging it's real and we're talking about it.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, because the framework doesn't exist, it's like we have to invent it, and there's going to be a lot of problems along the way of like false savior type shit of like, do this and this will happen. We're going to go through endless amounts of that before we're like, okay, it's the medical system.
Yeah,
it's pharmacy. Yeah, big pharma. Like it, I think a lot of it.
I mean,
stems
a shit
from that.
ton of it, I think, is big pharma. That's for sure. Like it is pretty easy to make up some of this stuff, and especially when it comes to like the nice thing I guess about therapists is they aren't peddling drugs. But when you come to like a psychiatrist, and my psychiatrist is dope. She's fucking cool. She never tried to say I needed anything. We talked about them all, so I'm gonna say this isn't on her. But at the same time, they give you the specific drugs that come through their office. So the ones that they're giving out are like that. And in that case,
they're like, you're
peddling
can drugs. Kind of like, like this might help you.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Like, that's not to say it's on them, but it's like,
you got to make the connection because you know how they get the drugs.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like,
that's where the missing connection is. It's like, because they have them, but you know how they got them. They got sold them.
Exactly. Somebody came and they sold them. Yeah,
and they sold them on that.
Yeah, and if you walk into certain places and the first thing they say is Prozac, most likely that was because that was the first thing. It doesn't mean that's all they have there, but for some reason that's the one that they're first giving you. You know, so stuff like that. But your I didn't mean necessarily like, I know on Reddit you can find every single group that you could ever find like that. I meant more so like, I think when people go on TikToks and Instagrams stuff that shows the visual pictures and stuff like that, I think it can feel like, I think FOMO created a greater sense of loneliness, or like, and that's what I mean. It's like, I think some parts of social media made it easier to feel like what is currently in someone's space isn't enough, or they're like not stimulated enough, or they're, you know, it's not where they want to be.
Yeah, I think it is like, even though you find community, I think at the same time you're still alienating yourself in that you can't, maybe some people, but I still think there's only a limited amount of connection you can have through like online discourse. There's no like, you still need that in person. Like you could talk to somebody online all day about it, but it won't be the same as like, oh, you meet up.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's where it's like, you find community, but you're still alienated and feeling isolated. So I mean, I agree with you on that.
Did either of you guys talk in chat rooms as kids?
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And I never did.
No,
and I not one I time. Think about it now, and I'm like, bro.
I had like
I always thought that was the creepiest shit.
Super
dude.
sus.
It's like, bro, you have no idea who you're talking to, and
I was saying like I kind of like had this online girlfriend who like I talked on the phone with, like this girl from Wisconsin.
Fuck.
Send me this like I was probably like 12, 13, 14. And like we would talk on the phone, and like she sent me pictures, and I was like, oh, she's cute and everything. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. I don't know how I stopped talking to her, but then like one day I think I just randomly saw her. No, I saw her like it was just like on a random blog or online, and I saw the pictures of her just came up. And I was like, oh, I don't think that's who I was talking to this whole time.
I know, yeah.
I've always had that inkling in my head. I'm like, this is just so strange. And every person, especially females that I've like talked to, they all grew up talking to weirdos in chat rooms.
Yeah.
I was that weirdo.
That's for real.
But then also she was that weirdo.
I remember going on chat rooms and it was ASL was the first thing. It was age, sex, location.
Oh, yeah. Fuck. See, I have no idea.
Yeah, dude. I remember people would be like ASL, and you'd be like, 16 male Los Angeles.
Bruh.
And like now I'm like, yo, there is just lurkers. Like it was literally like a fucking like garden just picking them out. Just like,
Oh,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is
All right.
crazy.
Well,
with that,
let's. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Take care of yourself, everybody.
Be wary.
Yeah.
The world's cold.
Cold world.
Yeah. Yeah. I Lakers won. That's so good for them.
Fuck the Lakers.
Yeah, basically.
Vamos black and gold.